What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports to Hine Show. Today is October 5th, 2021, and joining me today is Blake Jude. How you doing today, Blake?
Doing fantastic. It's been a great week of sports. This is actually the first time I think I've been on since football really started. So really exciting to get to join and talk about everything that's going on lately in college football and NFL.
Yeah, I mean, we have so much to talk about. The Bengals had a very impressive victory in Thursday Night Football. After that game, there was a video leak of Urban Meyer. We'll get into that. The Cincinnati belong on the college football playoffs. A little bit of wrestling, a little bit more NFL topics, a little bit of everything on today's show. Just kind of go, kind of making up as we go. But you were actually able to go to the Bengals game on Thursday night. Against Jacksonville last week. Can you kind of talk about experience there, the primetime game, Burrow against Lawrence?
Yeah, the Ring of Honor introduction. I think a lot of people were invited to the game and everything like that. I had someone offer me tickets to the game, and I ended up having to deny it at first, but I changed my mind and bought my own tickets this time around and invited a friend. And I mean, we had a blast. It was an absolute packed crowd, all Bengals fans pretty much, which we talked about before the podcast. It was pretty much the first time that's happened since 2015, 2016. It was a beautiful crowd. I think a lot of the reason is Joe Burrow coming back finally. And now that we have finally seen the Cincinnati team start winning, I think a lot of people are starting to buy in on the Cincinnati Bengals team. Really rough first half for the team, of course, down 14-0, but it was really impressed with the comeback Cincinnati put on, and that game-winning field goal by Evan McPherson. I actually posted it on my page at Stripe Pipe Cincy. You could see the crowd erupt the moment he makes that field goal. I think even though everyone expected it, I mean, the crowd went crazy. It was just, it was a great moment, and really nice tailgating. It was a packed stadium, like I said, very loud. Everyone got into it, and I'm hearing now that it's possible the Bengals might have a similar crowd this Sunday against Green Bay. So hopefully, if they can have another back-to-back crowd like that, I definitely think that crowd played a big factor on Thursday, and I think it can play another big factor this upcoming Sunday.
And, watching the game on TV, unfortunately, I was not able to go. I mean, that was like the loudest crowd I heard, at least in 2015. Like you said, it's basically like the Joe Burrow effect. I mean, we're multiple games over 500, which has not happened in, I believe, since 2018. This looks like the most promising team we've seen in quite some time. Obviously the Bengals are able to, win against Jacksonville. They were down 14-0 at halftime. They end up coming back, like you said, with the Evan McPherson kick. They ended up winning 24-21. So what were your kind of, initial reactions, your thoughts and everything like that against this game against the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot being able to see the entire field more often. I definitely kept my eye a lot on the running game as well as, the offensive line, as well as Jamar Chase. I watched a lot of Jamar Chase this time around. He was, whenever in the first and third quarter, he was facing towards us almost the entire time, split out to the left for Cincinnati. And you had to watch him match up against Shaquille Griffin and Tyson Campbell a lot. I mean, it is really shocking to see how often the free safety, Andrew Wingard, was always just nearing towards Chase. He was always thinking about Jamar Chase every single time. You could tell the Jacksonville Jaguars' offensive game plan was to not let Chase take the top off the defense. I mean, I'm not even joking. They would usually have one safety back. They usually kept one safety in the box. But, he was almost always, running towards Jamar Chase rather than the other side with Auden Tate, Tyler Boyd, Mike Thomas, whoever it was down there. And I think what really allowed the Bengals to kind of dominate in the second half was Cincinnati was like, okay, if you're going to take Chase double teams, we're just going to keep giving the ball to CJ Uzomah and Tyler Boyd, who were getting everything they wanted over the middle and in the screen game. And after a while, Jacksonville started realizing like, hey, we actually have to probably cover that. They're just getting easy yards. They go over to cover it. And then the moment they do, Bengals take the top off the defense to Jamar Chase. It was a perfect balance, I think. And I also like to see Cincinnati, after a while, recognize the double teams. They said, hey, let's have Jamar Chase inside and see what he can do there. And once they did that, they started, paying more attention towards the inside. Bam, you hit a screen to CJ Uzomah and a jailbreak screen. Everyone's already playing up. He gets a 20-yard gain. I mean, it was a really, really good offensive game plan, I thought. I was really impressed with how the offense played. But I really think the true MVPs was the second half defense. really impressed me. I also, like, at the end of the first half as well, Logan Wilson with a huge goal line stop. I think that was really the game changer and what really helped Cincinnati move on to win the game. It really kind of made the momentum change last minute at the end of the first half. And I mean, I was really, really impressed with not only how the linebackers, Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Akeem Davis-Gaither all had great games, but I was actually pretty impressed with how some of the secondary guys played as well. I thought Von Bell had a really good game, and I was really impressed with Brandon Wilson coming in and moving in as a starter to replace Jesse Bates. And, it was a really weakened defense. No Chidobe Awuzie, no Jesse Bates, two of your best players in the team. I thought they really did a good job of adjusting in the second half and helping stop the Jacksonville Jaguars when needed, only allowing 7 points, of course, in the second half. That really played a key factor into winning this game. But great offense. Joe Burrow was a beast. I mean, you can just tell by his swagger what he has in the field. He is legit. I thought the offensive line played pretty well. Wasn't too upset with anything that they did. It was really cool to see Joe Burrow just direct the offense, especially in that one play where he had Uzomah, the second touchdown of the game, where he had Uzomah kind of move behind Miles Jack on the left side of the sidelines. Just watching him being able to direct and tell players where to go during plays and be able to get the ball to them at the same time. It is magical. I mean, Joe Burrow is absolutely legit, and it just reinforced my theories watching him live on Thursday.
And you watch that game, and I mean, obviously, it was a very struggling first half. We don't put any points against one of the worst teams in the league, and the Jaguars. That Logan Wilson stop on fourth down, I would say, is probably the biggest play of the game. I know people would say the McPherson kick, to win the game. But, I mean, you really look at that, one of the last drives, of the, first half for, Jacksonville. The plays they were scoring on, I mean, it was like 3rd and 2, read options with Lawrence. And our defense just looked, completely lost. They looked like they were so shocked when Lawrence kept the ball on 3rd and 2 when he did that time after time after time. I think it was 3 straight 3rd and 2s he did that. And the final one, I think he ended up scoring. But, I mean, we were looking like a little kid, like looking at a magic trick. We were so shocked that, that happened. But, fortunately, we finally, realized what they were doing. That's basically the same play, kind of similar to what they did on fourth down with Logan Wilson's stop at the goal line to in the half. That really, helped us with momentum going in the second half, like you said. Start off in the second half, we had that huge bomb to Burrow to Chase. And, Chase, I mean, he didn't play bad by any means, but like you said, the safeties were on him and stuff. So, I mean, so they throw to one of the most underrated receivers in the league, and Tyler Boyd. Boyd had 118 receiving yards. And we got Uzomah involved really more than we ever have. And it's really interesting. A cool story with Uzomah. I mean, you look at last year, Thursday Night Football, he gets a season-ending injury and is, out for the year, week 2 against the Cleveland Browns. And he's rehabbing just like Burrow's been rehabbing in the offseason. Comes back in our only primetime game this season on Thursday Night Football. And he has the best game of his career, without a doubt. I mean, 95 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. He was phenomenal. I don't think anybody expected, Uzomah to be that big, important piece of our offense, on Thursday. I mean, Burrow was phenomenal. 348 passing, couple passing touchdowns. And you look at the second half of Burrow, that's what really stands out. I mean, he nearly had as many passing touchdowns in the second half as he did incompletions in the second half. I mean, he was just fantastic. The run game, it was kind of inconsistent at times. It's very interesting because, Mixon, there is a chance he might not play against Green Bay. We'll have to see. But it's something else, with the offensive line. There was maybe a player or two with the offensive line, wasn't really, good and maybe gave up a sack or two. For the most part, it was fine. Something else I noticed is on third down, when P. Ryan would come in normal when Mixon goes out on third down. They used Samaje Perine a lot more blocking on third down than they have in games past. I think that's maybe something to look into, but it's going to be interesting with, the possibility of Mixon not playing this week against Green Bay, how that kind of goes, maybe in their game plan, with third downs with, P. Ryan blocking at times, how, they're going to involve P. Ryan in the run game, how they want to get Chris Evans in the run game. I really feel like, this was first half, sucked, but it really proved, this is a different team because in years past, we would have lost this game. We would not have come back. And we just kind of like similar to the Vikings game. The Vikings game, it was a close game and we blew a, double-digit lead and we could have blown it if it wasn't for that Dalvin Cook fumble. But we found a way to win. Good teams always find a way to win. I feel like this Bengals team is different. And I really feel like this week against Green Bay will really show a big, implicate. It will be really interesting to see how we play against Green Bay, because it'll be interesting, how we kind of go up against some of these better teams in the league. I think you're on mute.
I like all those points. I really think, on the topic of the run game, it was really interesting to see how the Bengals rotated between running backs. Really kind of felt like Chris Evans was almost a wide receiver hybrid. Almost, he was almost always split out wide as a wide receiver, kind of taking a lot of screens, plays in the backfield, kind of like Darren Sproles is what I kind of thought of whenever I saw Chris Evans. It was really cool to watch him play on unlimited snaps. Of course, P. Ryan, as you mentioned, was almost in there on every third and long, I would say, coming in as an extra blocker for Cincinnati, basically lining up right behind the left guard, kind of being a guy that, if they get beat, there's another guy right there just to pick up. And I actually thought he did really, really well in pass protection. I was really impressed. I think a lot of us kind of theorized maybe Mixon could take over as the third down blocker and just be the full-time running back completely. I think P. Ryan has shown pretty clearly that he's a better blocker right now. So I think that he's kind of taking that role by storm. But I definitely think Mixon still had a very good game, though. I was really impressed with his, ability to find little holes and run. I really thought the offensive line performed pretty solid, but didn't open up too many holes in the running game. It was a bit of an issue I think that we had. I also think you could probably pretty well argue that this is probably the best and most healthiest defensive line they have played so far this year. Of course, no T.J. Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers. You could argue maybe the Bears as well. They didn't have Eddie Goldman, and the Vikings. I guess they could be considered as well. They lost Everson Griffin in the middle of the game, so it just depends. But this is a pretty solid defensive line that I think Cincinnati was trying to game plan around. That's why we saw them in the beginning of the game, do a lot of play action and force the ball on the outside to kind of make the outside playmakers make plays instead. But after a while, I think Mixon still had like 90-something yards rushing, I believe, or maybe 80. He had a couple of really nice runs in the third quarter that I was really impressed with. He kind of took over whenever they needed him to. And he did have a low ankle sprain at the end of the game. We saw P. Ryan kind of come in and take last bit of snaps. But, we forget P. Ryan had one of the biggest plays of the game, getting that huge conversion on third down to continue the Bengals drive to help them end up kicking the game-winning field goal. So a really big key play there by P. Ryan, I think, was another big factor in helping win this game. And I think that, P. Ryan isn't a guy that you are really wanting to bank on as a regular starter for any NFL team, but he's definitely going to be a pretty solid backup for you. And I wouldn't be surprised if you maybe see a Travion Williams call up this week if Joe Mixon were to not play, just in case, and let them have maybe more of a committee of running backs between him, Chris Evans, and of course, Samaje Perine.
I don't dislike P. Ryan. I feel like, out of our, three running backs on the roster, with Mixon, Evans, and P. Ryan, I feel like P. Ryan's the best blocking running back. But I don't really get the obsession with him. Like, honestly, I feel like there's times I've seen more potential and more promise in the preseason with Chris Evans as a possible running back number 2 than opposed to P. Ryan. And I know this is going to sound crazy. I like Travion Williams a lot. I do not get why he's never got enough carries. I mean, you look at the limited carries he had last season. He averaged like 5-6 yards carry, something like that. I'm like, obviously, I hope Mixon plays. But if he doesn't, I would love to see Travion Williams, like you said, get caught up to the main roster, have some, meaningful snaps. Because I feel like he, doesn't really get the opportunity that he deserves. But when he gets a limited opportunity, he makes the most of it. I'm excited to see him play if he does play this week and Mixon's out. But it's interesting. And it kind of goes back, the running backs, blocking, for the most part, has been fine. But, there was times, and, I believe the Minnesota game, P. Ryan and Mixon both gave up a sack in that game. And you look back, if we had Bernard, obviously Bernard's one of the best blocking running backs in the league. Maybe we would not have given up, sacks in that game. But what are your kind of, expectations and everything like that heading towards this week's game against the Green Bay Packers?
Well, you're going to have a fully healthy roster, I think, pretty well. I've been told that Jesse Bates, Chidobe Awuzie, T. Higgins, are all looking good for Sunday. All of them are likely to play right now, as what we're currently hearing. Even Ricardo Allen, who was in the IR, is likely to be taken off and joining the team again. So that's 4 key players in the team right now that could be coming in and playing this Sunday, which is huge. Xavier Su'a-Filo still day-to-day, but Jackson Carman's also been playing really well, so I don't know how much of a loss that would be if he doesn't play. Joe Mixon is the biggest question mark right now on the team health-wise. So, I mean, if Mixon does play, I think this is a fully healthy roster, and that's probably the first time we've seen this in the middle of the season since forever. Seems like Cincinnati's always struggling with a lot of injuries, and now we finally starting to have a healthy roster, and you're seeing it pay dividends as we're now 3-1, and I think we can really compete against Green Bay. No Jair Alexander this Sunday for Green Bay. No Zadarius Smith. I think two of the best defensive players on their team are going to be out. I think this is a game that Cincinnati could really put up a lot of points. But I think also, you can't expect them to really stop Aaron Rodgers too much. I can definitely see this game being really, really high scoring. That would be my prediction. I would say probably both teams could probably score in the 30s possibly, which is a lot, but I think it's definitely possible. I'm really looking towards Joe Burrow trying to really take advantage of no Jair Alexander out there. You're likely to have Kevin King cover Jamar Chase. You have to take advantage of that battle. Kevin King's been terrible this year. A couple of rookies, Eric Stokes and Shamar Jean-Charles, are really the backups for the squad right now. They'll probably be covering over T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. It's another matchup you really got to take advantage of. Both of them are pretty solid, but I think T. Higgins definitely outsizes all of them. If he's healthy, if he can come in and be completely healthy during the game, he's another guy I would really like to watch for. I just really hope Joe Burrow's able to take care of the ball and hopefully get good protection. I really think if the Bengals don't cause any turnovers or anything like that, they can really score a lot of points on the board. And ideally, Cincinnati's kind of had a couple of games lately where they've kind of had Aaron Rodgers' numbers somewhat. I would hope to see them maybe try to take advantage of that a little bit more and get some more turnovers, hopefully, against Aaron Rodgers. If you could do that and win the turnover battle and put yourself in good position, I really think they can have a really good advantage here in winning this game, hopefully. But like I said, definitely think it's going to be really high scoring, and hopefully with a healthy roster, it can be really close. I believe Vegas has the Packers as 3.5-point favorites right now, so they think it's going to be a really close game. I can definitely seeing it be within one possession. Who knows? Maybe another Evan McPherson game-winning field goal. That would be amazing if that does happen.
And it's interesting. I mean, who would have thought, heading into the season that the Bengals could actually compete with the Packers? Even though it's at home. I mean, the Packers were, Super Bowl contenders coming into the season, and they still are. But the Bengals, have really surprised some people. Honestly, I mean, we 100% should be 4-0 right now. That, Bears game was just, embarrassing. But we totally should have won that game. I mean, we could be one of the, only undefeated teams left. But, I mean, this Packers team, with their banged up secondary, if we get, Higgins back, I mean, that is, beneficial absolutely a ton. Because, I mean, you have Boyd, you have Higgins, you have Chase. All three of those guys right now are on pace to get over 1,000 yards this season. That's not happened many times that 3 receivers get 1,000 receiving yards. Mixon, he has to play, in my opinion, for us to have a chance to win. But it's one of those games, like, I feel like we have to play almost near perfect for us to win. I feel like our offense can keep up with the Packers. I mean, the way Burrow has been playing lately, our wide receiver core. But, I mean, we really need Mixon to play. But I feel like our defense has really been phenomenal this season. I saw Keem Davis-Gaither, Jermaine Pratt, and Logan Wilson. I think they're all in the top 20, 25 and grades this season. Our secondary has been better than people thought. Chidobe Awuzie didn't play last week, obviously. But, week 1, he really held, Justin Jefferson in check. Week 2, he really held Allen Robinson in check. This week, obviously, they played one of the best wide receivers in the league in Devontae Adams. But, I mean, I feel like we can keep up with the Packers scoring. It's one of those situations where I feel like we can score for the most part just about every single drive. But we're going to need that occasional defensive stop, it's not going to be easy when you're going up against one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and Aaron Rodgers. Mike Daniels, who's been with us, he's compared Burrow to Aaron Rodgers before. So it's very interesting. You're looking at Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, best quarterbacks to pass a decade or two, and then looking at Burrow, who's going to be one of the best quarterbacks for the next decade or two and years to come. So it's one of those situations where you see one of those older guys kind of getting closer towards the end of their career, and one of the young rising stars, breaking out into the league, basically.
Yeah. I really want to see how the Bengals defensive line can help affect maybe the game. If they can have another big game on the D line and force Aaron Rodgers to make some uncomfortable throws, it definitely think it puts you in a great position. The Packers have really had a solid offensive line the last several years, despite injuries. They've moved past it. They have still performed really well. And I really think if Cincinnati is able to just have a really good game, I'm really looking at Trey Hendrickson, B.J. Hill, Larry Ogunjobi. Those guys can have big games and force pressure on the quarterback, make Aaron Rodgers have to roll out of the pocket, extend plays. I really think that could play into a huge advantage for Cincinnati because they normally do it really, really well whenever they're able to generate a pass rush. And, you know, I definitely think that this is a game that Cincinnati, it's winnable. I definitely think it's winnable. You have potential to help stop this team. Again, another big wide receiver for the team, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, is also out. So you're going to be having, Green Bay only have Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, and I guess, Robert Tonyan is really the primary weapons of the team. I really think that it is possible to, possibly stop if you're able to, perform really well on the secondary. So this is, keep in mind, if Chidobe Awuzie is able to come back and start, this is the first time we're going to have a fully healthy secondary that we played so far. And, this is still a 3-1 team without their two starters playing together. So I think it's really impressive to see how far they've gotten already and the possibility of them performing really, really well together. I think it is really exciting to see. So hopefully between Trey Waynes, Chidobe Awuzie, Eli Apple, Mike Hilton, Darius Phillips, it's a solid core of players I really think can rotate and perform really well in secondary. I think if you could really force Aaron Rodgers to make mistakes and win on the defensive line and secondary, that is the key. That is the key to this game. That's the two places you want to watch: this Bengals secondary, the Bengals defensive line. Because if they win in those two places, they're winning this ball game. It really that's really the key right now.
And something else I will say I think is a big part is play calling. We've seen at times Zach Taylor, he'll have some plays that are just absolutely phenomenal. You look at the second half of Jacksonville, really, really good play calls. The first half, I mean, you can make a case he was out coached by Urban Meyer at times. Who, Urban Meyer, I mean, he might not even make a full season in Jacksonville. We saw the Bears game where we had 3 points heading into the fourth quarter. That should never happen. With the offensive talent like we have. And I know I'm kind of talking about, two sides of my mouth, talking good about us, but bad about us. But I feel like, the play calling, I feel like that's an interesting issue. If we can have consistent play calling, then I really feel like our offense will not be able to be stopped, because we've seen at times when the calls are good, Burrow goes lights out. He'll do whatever you want. He'll throw, he'll hand it off to Mixon, have some very impressive throws. When our play calling is bad, our offense kind of really gets in the funk. And we've seen that even looking back at, with the Browns a year or two ago, with their coach, their play calling was bad. You look at the pieces, they had tons of guys there, but with the play calling, they just couldn't really get it together at times. To me, I would also have that up there, but it's going to be interesting with Green Bay. And I feel like we have a better, I'm not going to say we will beat them, but I feel like, the outside media, ESPN, NFL Network, all these people, I feel like we have a better chance of beating the Packers than those people think, because, I mean, they don't really pay attention to us. I mean, we're 3-1. People talk about the Browns and the Ravens being first in the AFC North. We're also first. Nobody talks about it. I mean, if we win this game, I mean, we have to get talked about more. If we win this game, I feel like, I mean, we're possibly a 10-win team if we can win this game. If not, if we don't win, I wouldn't be surprised. I would still kind of have my original record, 8-9, maybe 9-8 scenario. But, I mean, this game's very interesting. And I feel like if we win this game, we can really get some momentum going and maybe get on the win streak.
This is the win playoff teams are built to win. This is if you want to get in the playoffs, this is a game that you can definitely take and have as a big part of your resume to help build, your case for, having the record you have. I really think Cincinnati is really competing against the entirety of the AFC West, between the Raiders, Broncos, Chargers, as well as, the AFC North, the Browns, possibly the Ravens, whoever doesn't win the division, for a wild card spot right now, and they're all 3-1 as well. So, I mean, you're right in the thick of things right now. If you want to get a key win against Green Bay, keep in mind you're also playing against the Jets next week, I believe, or it's the Lions. I believe it's the Lions next week. That's a possibility. If you beat Green Bay, you're 5-1. And I mean, that is unreal to imagine. You're probably first in the AFC North. You're in a great position for the future. That's really key, because the last 6 games of the season are going to be really, really tough. You're playing against all teams that are above 500 right now, the last 6 games of the season. So they're all going to be tough games. If you really want to jump out to a quick start, that should be the key in hopefully making the playoffs. And a win against Green Bay, I mean, if you haven't already bought in as a Bengals fan, if they beat Green Bay, I think everyone's bought in now. I think everyone's expecting a possibility at a playoff appearance. And I think, entering the season, that kind of felt like maybe a slight possibility, but not really. And now I think we're all kind of thinking, like, if you beat Green Bay this week on this Sunday, I mean, it's a team that can realistically make it, comparing to, the Raiders, Broncos. I mean, I feel like we're right there talent-wise with those guys. And I think you could really see a possibility of them going 10-7, possibly. And I think that really could be, shocking and really exciting for the future of this team, because, you only have a couple more positions right now to fill. This linebacker core has improved so much. Same with the defensive line. You've really started to kind of finally figure out these certain positions. I think, you upgrade a little bit more on the offensive line, maybe get another corner, and maybe another tight end, or maybe another weapon in some aspect, maybe another running back this offseason. I think you have a full roster of guys that you really trust and want to go out there. And I think, this year you're hoping for a playoff appearance. I think it's certainly possible. But next year, I think we're definitely kind of figuring out now. Next year is the year where I think this team could really start to shoot out into a next level.
And you bring that point up. This year, in a way, kind of reminds me of Josh Allen's, I think, a second year with Buffalo. They were a playoff team. They lost to Houston in the playoffs the following year, which was last year. Josh Allen was the MVP candidate, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, they were in the AFC Championship game. I mean, just a major improvement. You knew that team was going to be good. They were young. Kind of, similar situation right now, with the Bengals. And, you mentioned, towards the end of their schedule, I mean, we have a really, very, very, brutal, hard schedule. You go to our last 3 games. We play I don't know the order, but we play the Ravens, Browns, and Chiefs. We have to get as many wins as we possibly can heading into that, because, I mean, none of those games are going to be easy. The Browns have been, despite being 3-1, have not looked like a 3-1 team. Look at the Chiefs. They are, not what people expected them to be. They're 2-2, and, people think they should be better. The Ravens are 3-1. So we really have to get some of these wins, especially, some of these upset wins, like a win at Heinz Field like we already have. A win against the Packers would be huge. I mean, and then you have these games like the Jets and Lions, which, I mean, I'm not going to say are guaranteed wins, but are basically the closest thing to it. I mean, all of a sudden you get these, 7-8 wins by the time you go in these, 4 or 5 games left. It's very interesting. And you mentioned the Raiders and the Broncos. I feel like we are more comparable to the Raiders and the Broncos. The Broncos have the talent. I mean, the talent's there for them, but, Hamler's out. Jerry Judy's been out. But, they just have to find their quarterback. I feel like if they find their quarterback, they can be a good team. I know they are 3-1. They just lost to the Baltimore Ravens. But you look at the teams they've lost. They beat in the first 3 games. All those teams were 0-3. So I feel like they're undefeated's good, but you have to kind of look like in between the lines. Like their stats can be very deceiving. Wins can be very deceiving. I mean, they lost. To really, I mean, they beat very crappy teams like the Jets, who just got their first win. They beat some other teams. They also beat the Jaguars, who the Bengals just beat. And with the Jaguars, very, very interesting topic. With the Jaguars are basically they're 0-4. Urban Meyer's basically 0-5 right now. I mean, you look at it. This was a horrible hire from the beginning. I'm not one of those people who, say it was horrible after 1 week. I've been on this was just a stupid hiring from the very beginning. I thought it should have been Brian Daboll from Buffalo or Byron Leftwich, who was a former Jaguar. It makes so much sense. The offense coordinator in Tampa Bay. So, you look at this Jaguars team. They're up 14-0 against a good Bengals team, primetime football. And, obviously they blew a lead. They ended up losing. And instead of traveling back with the team, Meyer goes to a bar and he has some girl basically grinding and dancing on him. So, I mean, you look at Meyer, everybody, he's in the public eye, he's 0-4. He just blew a double-digit lead against Cincinnati. They're not playing the worst team in the NFL right now. Meyer's hearing all this talk, aggravated. He'll go home to his wife. Oh, it's okay. Urban, everything's going to be okay. At this point, I mean, you don't even have the trust of your wife to be that dependent on, because, I mean, you're having some girl at the bar dance on you with your 0-4. I mean, I'm looking at different reports of this. I mean, last week they traded a top 10 pick from last year, C.J. Henderson, to the Carolina Panthers. They drive as Travis Etienne first round, even though they had James Robinson. That still, like, just really ticks me off. It makes no sense. I mean, this each day and each week, Urban Meyer is proving why this was a horrible hire. And even the people defending him in Jacksonville, I feel like at some point you have to be like, I know it's only 4 games, and you try not to overreact. And, I mean, you probably got to let him ride out at least the rest of the season. But, like, holy crap. Like, when you're Jacksonville and Urban Meyer, you don't think it could possibly get worse. You blow a double-digit lead, you're 0-4, and then within the next day or two, you have Urban Meyer apologizing to, his players and everything like that for a stupid decision at a bar, even though he did not travel back with his team. I mean, Urban Meyer right now, I mean, I don't even think it's a debatable topic. He's the worst head coach in the NFL, and he's making the Jaguars the worst team in the NFL, even though they have the pieces there. I mean, this Urban Meyer situation in Jacksonville, his tenure is not going to be very long at all. I wouldn't be surprised if he's fired by the end of the year.
I think it's pretty obvious by now the Urban that left college and had all of those accusations and all the issues never left. It's still the same Urban, and that's the problem. I think a lot of people are hoping that Urban Meyer could take a couple of years off, clear his head, and realize, like, hey, what I did was screwed up, completely reset, go to the NFL, completely change everything. I think that's what everyone was hoping for, at least, right? And I was in the agreement with you. I really didn't see how Urban Meyer could be an NFL head coach. It became pretty obvious from the jump. The moment Urban Meyer lost the game, he said, I didn't expect all these teams to be Alabama good. It's like, this is the NFL. All these teams are supposed to be Alabama good because they're all of the best players from all these teams. So, I mean, I definitely think that it's just pretty obvious that he wasn't built for NFL. And honestly, I think he's not even built for coaching anymore. It just seems like this was a experiment gone wrong. If he hasn't already lost the locker room, he probably just now did after all this happening. I mean, this is a game that it's a young Jacksonville Jaguars team, right? A lot of young guys, a lot of rookies. It's a new team that is really trying to, win games and try to gain their confidence. And I mean, how does it feel whenever your coach basically abandons you and makes you go on the team playing by yourself back home? I mean, that's just a really poor. I mean, it's poor leadership and poor. I mean, honestly, if I'm an owner or a general manager and I see that happen to my team, coach is off the team. I don't care what happens; he's immediately gone. I'm not giving Urban Meyer another chance, especially going 0-4 right now. I just don't see that. I don't see why that they are keeping him on the team. I definitely would have gone with Brian Daboll if I had the option, and I definitely think if Urban Meyer is not fired this week, if he goes 0-6 or 0-7, he will be fired very, very soon. And I think it is only a matter of time until we see the Jacksonville Jaguars start searching again for a new head coach. And I mean, it's sad to see that happen. I think I think a lot of people were excited about Urban Meyer because of how well he's able to construct rosters in college. But college is a whole nother NFL is a whole nother ball game from college. Completely different schemes. You have pro style offenses. Completely different ways of attracting players to your team. There's no recruiting anymore. It's convincing players to sign with you. It's a lot different in the NFL, and I just think Urban Meyer is not prepared for it. He's not prepared for coaching at all anymore. In fact.
And you look at some of the, assistant coaches he's hired and, people like that. For instance, I believe Charlie Strong is on the Jaguars coaching staff. Obviously, he was with Louisville, with Bridgewater. The whole Texas, him with the Texas Longhorns did not work out at all. He goes to South Florida. He honestly underachieves there. He gets these college coaches acting like this is some type of recruiting game or something, which it's not at all. And you look at college and the NFL, it's completely different. You look at college, you're coaching boys into men. In the NFL, you're coaching men who, already have families and everything like that, who, some players honestly might even be older than you. And when you're in the NFL, I mean, you expect these players to mature. When you're the head coach, you're supposed to, help, guide these men. When you're acting like the college player, instead of going back on a team playing, you're the one at the bar, dancing with a girl and stuff. This was just, I mean, it's so dumb and ignorant. And I mean, it really helps his case even more why he should be fired. I mean, Urban Meyer has appeared in more AEW pay-per-views than he has NFL wins. And that kind of says something. I mean, I didn't expect the Jaguars to be good by any means, but I don't think anybody expected them to be, this bad. It's interesting to see who they will hire because there's no chance, he stays here in Jacksonville for more than a year, in my opinion. There's lots of, kind of talking about Cincinnati, with the, Jaguars win against the, Jacksonville on Thursday night. Switching to Cincinnati in the college football, Cincinnati had a major win, definitely their biggest win in school history, defeating Notre Dame 24-13. And, looking at the top 5 here in the AP poll, Alabama's number 1, Georgia's number 2, Iowa's 3, and Penn State's 4. Alabama will play Georgia, and Iowa will play Penn State. So if Cincinnati wins out, which I would say they will, the American is an underrated conference. We've seen upsets at times before, like UCF has had some upset losses the past couple of seasons. I think there's a legitimate case that Cincinnati is a playoff team. I think they're a legitimate case that they should be a playoff team right now. Obviously, these AP poll rankings don't mean jack squat when it comes when the playoff committee releases their top 25 rankings. But, Cincinnati defeated Indiana. Indiana does not have a good record, but I think they're better than people give them credit for. Notre Dame at times is overrated, but I don't think they're bad. But it's one of those things, for instance, take last year. When Clemson beat Notre Dame, oh, Clemson's so good. When Cincinnati beats Notre Dame, oh, well, Notre Dame's overrated. It's such a, double standard type of deal since Cincinnati is a small school. Cincinnati deserves to be in the playoffs. There's been lots of rumors with the college football playoff expanding to more teams being involved, but there has not been a group of 5 team more deserving in the playoffs this year than Cincinnati. If they could win out, there's no reason why they shouldn't be. If Cincinnati were to play Ohio State right now, I honestly think Cincinnati would win. If Cincinnati were to play some of these other top 6, 7 schools, I think they would have some good games. Obviously, they would not beat Alabama. Obviously, they would not beat Georgia. But for any other team, I think they would compete with them. And, I mean, look at the ratings and how much money you would get, even at that standpoint. With Cincinnati against Alabama, I mean, look at how many fans, packed, Notre Dame Stadium for Cincinnati. There was such a, top game to watch. It would really help, the college football playoff get more money when it comes to ratings because it's a small school, potential upset alerts. And I mean, we want to see this small. I don't even like Cincinnati. I don't like Luke Fickell at all, but I want to see Cincinnati in the college football playoffs. It's bound to happen. It needs to happen. And if it doesn't, it just proves that there's never going to be a group of 5 team in the playoffs as long as it's a 4-team team in the college football playoffs.
I certainly think if Cincinnati goes undefeated, it is almost a guarantee to make the playoffs. I actually think there's a good chance it might even be a 2 seed, the second overall team in the playoffs. Like you said, Alabama, Georgia, Iowa State, Penn State. Those are games that are going to be happening here in the near future. I think Cincinnati jumps both of whoever loses in those games. So obviously they're already in the 3 seed. And if Penn State were to beat Iowa, they still have Ohio State. They still have Michigan. They've got a really tough schedule ahead of them. So there's a case to be made. They lose another game, and all of a sudden, Cincinnati's right behind Alabama or Georgia for the number 1 overall seed, which is insane to think, but is possibly true at the same time because I think right now Cincinnati by far has the easiest schedule remaining of those top 5 teams. I think their hardest game is against SMU right now. So, I mean, they have no business losing any of the games they play for the remainder of the season. They have proven themselves against Notre Dame and Indiana, who are 2 pretty solid teams in college football right now. I think this is a team that seriously could be the second overall seed in college football when it's all said and done this year. And I think that is really exciting to see because I think Cincinnati certainly deserves it. Luke Fickell has done a fantastic job with this team, completely turning them around, making them fantastic. Still have one of the best defenses in the nation, Majai Sanders, Ahmad Sauce Gardner. It's a great team all around with those guys. I'm really impressed with how Desmond Ridder is able to pop back up and continue to perform well whenever needed. I just think this is a complete team right now, and this is the best they're probably going to ever be in Cincinnati history. So I think this is a time where if you're a Cincinnati fan, you should be all in right now on the Bearcats because this is a legit team, and people need to get excited about them because I mean, they should be going 12-0. They will be going 12-0 this year. It's pretty obvious they're going to be at least a 3 seed as long as they win out, possibly a 2 seed if Penn State were to, win against Iowa and lose again. I think this is a team that is really going to the next level, and I'm really excited to see how this all turns out. I am really impressed with how they performed so far, and I think I still expect Georgia and Alabama to certainly be the top dogs and probably make the playoffs as well. And between Iowa and Penn State, I could see one of those teams still being in it. But I really think Cincinnati is right there in the thick of things in talent compared to some of those teams. Georgia's, I think, the best team in the league right now. Alabama's probably a close second. I would stick Cincinnati at third, and that's how confident I am with their roster.
And you look at Alabama and Georgia. To me, I really feel like they're just in a league of their own right now. I mean, they're in the top 2 teams, and everybody else is in a major just tier below them. But something else, I mean, Iowa and Penn State are sneaky in the top 5. Nobody really talks about them much, which in a way, I know this might sound weird. This might actually hurt Cincinnati. Obviously they play each other, but Ohio State's right behind them, a couple spots back, and Ohio State plays both those schools. I mean, if Ohio State has 2 top 10 wins against Iowa and Penn State, and their only loss is to Oregon, who is a top 10 team, they lost to Stanford this past week. I mean, then there's a case, Ohio State has a legitimate chance to probably jump Cincinnati, which would absolutely suck. I've seen lots of bold predictions. I have Ohio State playing Cincinnati, but not in the playoffs. If Cincinnati's in the playoffs, and if they would get a 2 seed, which it'll be very interesting because, in my opinion, I feel like, obviously, I feel like Georgia and Alabama are both going to be undefeated heading into the SEC championship game. And whoever loses that game, I feel like if Alabama's number 1, they might drop to number 2. And if Georgia's 2, and if they lose, they might drop to 3. I really don't know because, I mean, if you have an undefeated Cincinnati team or a 1-loss Georgia or Alabama, and their only losses to the other team I just said, I mean, you can make a case that Cincinnati should remain number 3, even though they're undefeated. But the strength of schedule with Alabama playing Georgia and vice versa. But the thing I mentioned with Ohio State, I feel like that's interesting because you look at Michigan. I mean, they're also in the top 25, and this Ohio State team right now is very lucky to only have 1 loss. You look at Oklahoma; they're lucky to be undefeated right now. They play Texas, which is they might lose this week. But you look at these games, like lots of things have went Cincinnati's way. They have the biggest win in school history. Oregon loses to Samford. Oregon's now done. There's no chance they're in the playoffs, in my opinion. But there's still some things of some things, like Ohio State will win out. If you're Cincinnati, then it starts getting concerning because obviously Alabama and Georgia, I mean, they're basically locks to get in. But with Cincinnati if Ohio State wins out, then that's your 3 team. Then it's a matter of Cincinnati undefeated. Obviously they should, but with Oklahoma, if they were to win out, or one of these other teams, it's interesting. And if Cincinnati were to get in, I really, really, really hope they're a 2 seed. And I want them to play Ohio State so bad. They would beat Ohio State right now, in my opinion. I freaking hate Ohio State. I mean, we're both, kind of local and stuff. We don't live that far away from each other. I guarantee you, I mean, you've seen some stupid, biased Ohio State fans. I mean, they have some of the worst fans in the country. I mean, who the Buckeyes play, stuff like that. And they can't name one player. It's just very frustrating. Ohio State fans are the college football equivalent to Steeler fans. They're horrible. I want to see Cincinnati play Ohio State, regardless if it's in the playoffs or regardless if it's in the bowl game, because I really feel like the Bearcats right now would beat Ohio State.
I really think the worst case scenario for Cincinnati playoff wise is Iowa beats Penn State. Iowa goes undefeated. And then you see Ohio State and Oklahoma run the table and perform fantastic. Just blow out every team. Ohio State has Michigan, has Penn State. If they win those 2 games, they are shooting up the rankings. I mean, that is the worst case scenario for Cincinnati because I definitely think, you can make an argument an 11-1 Ohio State team if they improve a lot and get a lot better. If Oklahoma is able to improve a lot, get a lot better, to still be undefeated in the Big 12, there's a case to be made. Those teams could possibly pass Cincinnati. And if Iowa's still ahead of them already, of course, Georgia and Alabama are still going to be up there, probably ahead of them as well. That's worst case scenario. And that's absolutely going to be the downfall, I think, of Cincinnati trying to make the playoffs. But I think right now, Cincinnati's position where they're the 5 seed, they're probably going to go undefeated. it is a guarantee that 2 of the top 4 teams are going to lose a game eventually. So they should hop them. As long as Ohio State and Oklahoma don't make too much noise and impress too much, I don't think, even if Oklahoma and Ohio State win out, I don't think they're guarantees to make it. They have to blow teams out and just impress all around. If they beat Penn State by 35, then we're talking, right? Like, it has to be blowouts. It has to be convincing. And I think that, as long as that does not happen, Cincinnati's in a good position to win, but it is not impossible that Cincinnati that does not make it while being undefeated. And that is still just crazy to imagine because, what else do they need to do at this point, right?
So let's say Ohio State, let's say that they lose a game. Obviously, Iowa plays Penn State. Let's say one of those teams are in it. So it's Bama, Georgia, Iowa, or Penn State for the number 3. Number 4 is an undefeated Cincinnati or undefeated Oklahoma. Which team would you put at number 4?
Based off of what I know right now, watching these rosters play and perform, Cincinnati has the better overall record, in my opinion, and schedule. They're the better team, right? Oklahoma has barely dodged several losses, even against Tulane, right? They're playing these teams super close, and we have yet to see Cincinnati play a uber close game against a below average team, right? Like, maybe if they play South Alabama close, then we can have a conversation, or if they play Temple close, then we can be talking or something like that. But until they do, I'm putting Cincinnati in front because they've just been they've proved to me that they can blow out any team that isn't Notre Dame, and even then, they can still be the better team than Notre Dame, right? The schedule gets a lot easier for them down the line, and if they play like they did against Notre Dame, it's going to be easy wins from here on out. So they continue to blow out teams by 21, 28 plus. You're in a perfect position to continue to be in the playoffs. There's no reason for you to drop any lower, right? Even if Oklahoma were to play well, Oklahoma would have to just be, unstoppable. They had to be beating Big 12 teams, good Big 12 teams. By, like I said, 28, 35, kind of like Ohio State is. They need to earn their wins over Cincinnati. And Cincinnati is not going to be letting up anytime soon. They're going to be blowing out all these teams out of the water. So Oklahoma has to do that and some for them to be able to make it. So I'll take Cincinnati right now. I think it's a pretty low chance Oklahoma makes it because I do think they probably lose a game this year. I'm not impressed with Spencer Rattler or that team much at all.
It's interesting. This is Cincinnati's biggest win in school history over Notre Dame. This college football season has just been so weird. There's been so many teams who expect to be good who are not. Heading into the year, I thought Clemson was stupidly overrated. I'm just so overrated. I did not think they were bad enough to not be in the top 25. They're not even in the top 25. If you look at Oklahoma, they haven't been playing good even though they're undefeated. Ohio State has lost. Oregon loses to unranked Samford. It's just weird, Iowa and Penn State, like I mentioned, they're not being talked about, but they're both in the top 4. Oklahoma, to me, kind of reminds me of 2014 Florida State. If you go back to that year, that was Jameis Winston's second year with Florida State, full-time starter. They went undefeated. There were so many games they should have lost, and it was so close. And then when they finally played a really good team, I think it was Oregon, the first game in the playoffs that year, they got absolutely killed. Winston was horrible. Just their whole team was horrible. I think they ended up losing by like 30 or something like that. But it's like Oklahoma reminds me of that team this year. Ohio State even at times reminds me of that team this year. I know Ohio State lost to Oregon, who's one of the better teams in the country. But, you look at it. There's been times that both these teams, even though combined they only have one loss, they just do not look good as opposed to Cincinnati. They beat Notre Dame by double digits. And Fickell, he's known to run up to score. There's no way they're going to stop doing that because they need all the, bragging points and everything like that they can possibly get to, help their case for the playoffs. It's interesting. As of right now, in my opinion, I feel like Cincinnati has to be in the playoffs. It's really, really interesting if they can win out. I would assume they will. With that, Alabama and Georgia and Iowa and Penn State, both those teams play each other. At least 2 of those teams are going to have a loss. Could really help their case. If Ohio State or Oklahoma will lose, that really helps their case, so much. I haven't really talked much about college football on the show this year compared to last year. Kind of switching gears here to, let's see here, wrestling just for a minute. Completely switching gears. Braun Strowman was released by WWE several months ago. and there's rumors that AEW, might sign Braun Strowman. Do you think this is a good idea or bad idea by AEW? And ultimately, do you think AEW should sign Braun Strowman?
I really was a fan of Braun Strowman through his time with WWE. I really thought, the old Braun Strowman more or less was a lot better. And I really enjoyed seeing him kind of go with the Wyatt family and be a dominant force. And I think one thing that AEW kind of doesn't have right now, they have a lot of great stables, of course, iconic stables, great, strong faces. I think they're still, they don't have that big, strong, dominant heel right now, right? That just destroys everyone and runs through everyone. Because WWE has almost lived off that. They've had the Brock Lesnar's, the Braun Strowmans, the Canes, guys like that who just, Mark Henry, Big Show. I mean, they just run over people. That's just their thing, right? Well, AEW has not yet had that. I think right now they don't have the. I mean, they've had the Big Show, they've had guys like that, but they haven't been like as dominant, right? Braun Strowman could be that guy who day in and day out comes in, destroys people, leaves, right? And I think that would be really, really fun to see. These talents that are leaving WWE. I mean, the only other time I watch wrestling would be AEW, right? So I would love to see these wrestlers go to another brand I would watch. So personally, bias-wise, yes, I would love to see him in AEW because I watch AEW and I would love to see Braun Strowman more. And I think for him in the future of AEW is probably the best that he does because this is probably the best chance he's going to get at getting more, of course, more revenue. When it comes to building up his popularity, it's only going to be more and more because AEW is getting more and more popular by the day. I think this is probably the best move for him. Salary wise, it just makes too much sense. I think for it to actually happen, unless WWE just all of a sudden wants to forgive him and re-sign him. I doubt that's going to happen. If he does not go back to WWE, it's going to be AEW, and I think it's the right move.
It's interesting because you look at some of the AEW signings the past half year. I mean, Adam Cole. Bryan Danielson, CM Punk. Really, all three of those debuts happened within a month of each other, which is just absolutely crazy. And all those guys are really good wrestlers. So Kenny Omega, one of the best wrestlers in the world. The Young Bucks. I mean, the Lucha Brothers. AEW is very different. WWE in the fact they have legitimate wrestlers. WWE does to some extent, like Seth Rollins and AJ Styles, but like you said, WWE is kind of more so like the tall and powerful, stuff like the Undertaker and Kane, Big Show, and more so the entertaining part. You look at Braun Strowman. To me, he doesn't really fit the AEW mold in the fact like the really good wrestler type of deal. But I could maybe see them signing him to kind of, start up that, process where they have, this big, huge, tall guy and build him up like the Big Show, like you mentioned. But there's also talks of him possibly going to Impact Wrestling, which to me, in a way, I feel like he could be, he could maybe win a title in Impact Wrestling. I don't really watch it, hardly at all. But with AEW, I feel like that's ultimately the best move because if you're wanting to get your name out there, if you're wanting to get money, I believe WWE released him when he was due $1.3 million or something like that his next year in his contract. Honestly, I kind of thought that'd be maybe slightly more than that. But with the recognition and the revenue and the money he would get from AEW, like you said, AEW is getting bigger by the day. It's the biggest threat to WWE. It would make the most sense for Braun Strowman's standpoint to sign with AEW. I just don't know if AEW would be willing to sign Strowman because he doesn't really fit their typical mold and a AEW wrestler.
I think regardless of the mold in particular, I mean Braun Strowman's going to be a guy that puts people in seats, right? Like he's going to have people come to go see him. He did in WWE. He was built up to be a superstar. A lot of people liked him a lot through the beginning of his career. He was a big reason why a lot of people were there. And even won the WWE title at once, right? Like he was a big deal. And I think his name itself, it brings enough to him to be able to be attracted to AEW because they know that if he joins, it's just another big name that's going to be added to this stacked roster already. And even though he's not particularly the tactical, talented wrestler type, he is still going to be a guy that offers, I think, a breath of fresh air in certain matches and stuff like that. And you don't have to have him be the center of attention at all times, right? But he can be a guy that maybe could be in the mid ladder of matches where he's just a dominant force going after some of the mid ladder titles. And I would like to see how some of those underdog faces can maybe respond and beat them. I think that'd be really cool to see like a comeback story of some guys.
With Strowman, it's interesting. I've read lots of stuff. As of right now, it looks like it'll be Impact Wrestling, but just over the past couple of days, it seems like AEW has kind of gained some interest in him. I mean, if they get him, I mean that's just another person that they a huge signing. There's lots of rumors that they could sign Bray Wyatt. I mean, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn's contract expires soon. I would love to see Owens in AEW. I mean, they are gaining popularity by the day. It's very interesting. This is definitely the biggest threat that WWE has had in a very, very, very long time. And kind of going back to some football here, obviously, let's see here. The Sunday night game, I would say, in my opinion, probably the most anticipated regular season game of all time. I really cannot think of a bigger one. Brady returns to New England, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they defeat the Patriots. In this game, all of the media hype and everything is on Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. In the week and in the days ahead, of this matchup, there's lots of talks, that Belichick and Brady didn't get along. Brady was tired of playing for Belichick and everything like that. The storylines on these, two guys: can Belichick beat Brady? Can Brady beat Belichick? And it's very interesting. I mean, it seems like nobody really talked about Matt Jones much throughout the week. And Matt Jones, to me, was the most very, intriguing part of this game throughout it. Matt Jones played absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion. I don't think anybody expected him to play this good. There was times, in my opinion, I think at times he outperformed Tom Brady. And I know that might sound kind of crazy, but Matt Jones played like he did in college. The best, he is best his IQ in football. He's not going to wow you with his arm strength, like a Justin Herbert or a Josh Allen. But his IQ when it comes to the passing, the best reads, and everything like that is why he was so good at Alabama. It's why he was drafted so high in the first round, and really showcased it on Sunday night that the Patriots, they have a bright future with Matt Jones, and he was absolutely phenomenal. I was very, very impressed with him. But that was the biggest surprise on Sunday night. And then you look at the game in general. Lots of people didn't know who the Patriots, or if the Patriots were going to win, if the Buccaneers were going to win. It was a very interesting, matchup, because we haven't really seen anything like this, to me, in my opinion, ever. I mean, look at Bill Belichick. He's helped Brady get 6 Super Bowls. I mean, nobody knows Tom Brady better than Bill Belichick. And nobody knows Belichick better than Tom Brady, it seems like. I mean, I've been trying to think of different analogies, and the best one I can think of, it took me a week, and it's still a pretty crappy one. Look at Star Wars, for example. I mean, you look at, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he brings up, Anakin Skywalker, and eventually Anakin turns bad. That would be like Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers. And nobody knows Anakin better than Obi-Wan Kenobi. Nobody knows Obi-Wan Kenobi better than Anakin. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with Brady and Belichick. Belichick's the only person who knows Brady's tendencies compared to anybody else. Vice versa with Tom Brady and Belichick. I mean, this was really like a storyline for the ages. This is something we are never, ever, ever, ever going to see again, regardless of which sport, whether it's basketball, baseball, or the NFL. This was just a really fun game to watch. And honestly, I mean, I'm watching it and sitting down, really felt like it had this like Super Bowl type atmosphere and this hype around it. And I mean, deservingly so, because I mean, Tom Brady spent like 2 decades with New England, won 6 Super Bowls. Belichick, one of the best coaches of all time, going up against each other. This was just a great game. Obviously the Buccaneers ended up winning. Nick Folk missed a 56-yard field goal. That would have tied his career long. In my opinion, if I was Belichick and the Patriots, I honestly probably would have ended up going for it. I mean, it's 4th and 3. Matt Jones was having a field day with all these little short and dinky 4 or 5 yard passes. I feel pretty confident that they probably would have ended up, getting the, first down and 4th and 3. That was my only flaw of that game. I wish they would have went for it to make it more intriguing. But overall, this was just a terrific game. In my opinion, right now, this is probably the game of the year so far in the NFL.
I will say the rain played a big factor in this game. It changed a lot of what we were expecting this game to be. Tom Brady had a lot of missed passes that he probably should have completed, and you could argue the rain might have played a factor. Also, possibly the crowd as well. I would definitely say if he's ever going to have any type of butterflies for a game, it's probably going to be this one where he returns to his home crowd that is big fans of him, as well as kind of not liking him anymore because of course he left the Patriots. So it's a love-hate relationship right now between him and the fans. I can definitely see him being worried about that and maybe having a bit of anxiety when it comes to playing in the Patriots stadium. But at the same time, I think rain certainly played a factor, and he missed a lot of passes that should have been completed. And I think Mac Jones, credit to Bill Belichick and how he designed the plays. I think he played around the rain really, really well, forcing Tom Brady to throw deep passes and forcing incompletions like that. He played to Tom Brady's weaknesses, which I think worked. The Patriots only put up 19 points with a high-powered and talented offense. Meanwhile, he really detected the short game. He really relied on some of these, rotating running backs to really kind of dominate the passing game for the Patriots, which I think was a solid game plan, but being unable to take the top off the offense is always going to hurt you and always going to cap off what you can score. I totally agree with you. They should have went for it on fourth down. I think they really could have. If they got that, I think they probably win the game if they drive it anymore and kick an easier field goal. I think that should have been the move that they did make. But credit to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. They really respond to adversity. Of course, they were down 10-7 for a long time, and they completely come back and do really well. They continue to drive the ball down the field. I believe, was it 4 field goals for Ryan Suckup, I believe. So, a really good job by them to be able to get in the positions where he can make those field goals and give them the lead at the end and hold on defense just long enough to win.
I mean, looking at this game, this was kind of like a movie, basically, just a perfect storyline movie. I mean, this guy was with this coach for years and, so successful. He, I guess you would say, is the bad guy now, and he comes back and everything. I mean, he breaks the passing yards record in New England. I mean, that's just perfectly fitting. I mean, and at the very end, Nick Folk misses the field goal. This was a terrific game. I wish more games, were like this. And you really look at some of these primetime games so far. Take away the Panthers and the Texans game. I think every single Thursday night game so far has been a one-possession game, and it's been very, very good. The Buccaneers and the Cowboys. There's been some other ones as well, like the Bengals and the Jaguars and a couple other ones. These games are so much more intriguing and fun to watch opposed to a blowout. And, speaking of blowouts, I mean, I don't think anybody expected this to happen. The Arizona Cardinals are the last team in the NFL who was undefeated. They absolutely embarrassed the Los Angeles Rams 37-20. Heading into the season, the Cardinals, to me, I thought they were actually slightly overrated because, they acquired, A.J. Green and J.J. Watt. Those guys are not what they used to be. They have Chandler Jones coming back from a season-ending injury, who is easily one of the most underrated defensive players in the league. And you look at the NFC West. The NFC West is definitely the toughest division in the NFL. And I said before the season, if the Cardinals were in any other division, they're guaranteed in playoffs, in my opinion. They have a really nice team, really nice offense and defense. But the NFC West is just so tough to play against a Super Bowl contender in the Rams. Debatably, Super Bowl contender in the 49ers, the Seahawks, who have been in the playoffs like every single year since Russell Wilson's been a quarterback since 2012. And I mean, then you have the Cardinals, who don't really have any playoff experience. You have Cliff Kingsbury heading into the season. He's high on the hot seat, in my opinion. And then you're the only undefeated team left. You beat without a doubt, the best team in your division by 3 possessions. You make their offense look horrible with, an offensive guru and Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, the best, one of the most underrated wide receiver duos in the league. I mean, and you score 37 points against their defense, who is pretty good. I mean, you have Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, 2 top 10 defensive players in the league. This was a statement game by Arizona. Heading into the week, I thought the Rams were the best team in the league. I still think they're definitely up there, but now I think it's interesting because part of me kind of thinks it might be Arizona. I'm not trying to hop on the Arizona bandwagon because there's been games, they played. For instance, you look at the week prior, they struggled against the Jaguars, but they've played some teams that haven't really been good so far. But I think you can make a legitimate case as of this moment, the Cardinals are the best team in the league. That might change 1 week from now if they end up losing or whatever. But I would say as of right now, the way the Cardinals performed this past week, if it was like it would be different if it was like the Bears or the Steelers or something like that. But when you absolutely embarrass the best team in the league heading into the week, and you're the only undefeated team left, to me, I would say as of right now, the Cardinals are probably the best team in the NFL.
It's hard to bet against it right now. I mean, Kyler Murray, I think right now is the MVP favorite. So you have the best player in the league right now in Kyler Murray. Chandler Jones is probably one of the favorites for defensive player of the year right now. He had an unreal week one, and he has been a dominant force on the edge for the Cardinals. You can make the case Byron Murphy is one of, if not the most improved player in the cornerback room out of anyone in the NFL right now. He has been fantastic. Has 3 interceptions on the year. Has really locked down anyone he is going up against. And I mean, you look at guys like Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins, Jordan Hicks. Going on the opposite side, AJ Green has performed really well. Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore. I mean, they have hit on a lot of these signings and picks the last couple of years, and they are all gluing together and working perfectly right now. I would say the biggest weakness probably is the offensive line, but with Kyler Murray, that's not really a problem because he can just scramble out of the pocket and do whatever he wants with the ball. So they are doing a fantastic job of really just creating a roster on Kyler Murray to help work. I really like the duo of James Conner and Chase Edmonds. They really don't get a lot of light shined on them right now, but I really think it's a good compliment to the offense. Chase Edmonds being more of a receiving back kind of guy out of the backfield. James Conner being more of the guy that just runs between the tackles. I really like both of them. And I think they really offer a good change of pace for this team whenever they're needed. And I just think top to bottom, this is the most complete roster in the NFL. And, I came close to saying that this year as well, because I knew that the key signings of J.J. Watt, AJ Green, guys like that could play a big factor in helping this team improve. I really like the Rondale Moore pick. I really like the Zaven Collins pick. I thought they could be really solid. But it was just in the back of my mind. I kept thinking, like, the Rams are still there, the Buccaneers are still there, the Chiefs are still there. Are they truly the best team? I don't think so. And here we are now seeing the Chiefs are obviously not invincible anymore. They are losing games they probably should be winning. The Buccaneers lost to the Rams, so the Rams proved they were a better team. It was a convincing win there for LA. And of course, now the Cardinals go to LA and beat the Rams head to head. So for all I know right now, if Kyler Murray's the best player in the league right now, MVP candidate, and they have the roster they have right now playing the way they will for the future, yes, this is the best team in the NFL. And I think that there's a very good chance that they might have the best record in the league when it's all said and done this year. I could see a 14-3 record in the NFC West, which is extremely impressive.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And you bring up the Chiefs. I mean, they are 2-2, and the Chiefs. I mean, I said earlier, I don't remember who I was talking about. Wins can be deceiving. There can be some bad spots in wins. The Chiefs gave up 30 points to the Eagles. Like, that is concerning. I know it was the last, minute garbage touchdown. The Eagles do not have really a great offense by any means. And you look at the Browns game. It was before I messed up snap on a punt by Cleveland. We could very well be looking at the Chiefs being 1-3 right now. The Buccaneers, I mean, a very hard-fought win against New England this past Sunday. I mean, the Packers, they are one of the better teams in the league. They're inconsistent at times. The Rams, to me, were clearly the best team in the NFL heading into this week. And the fact that you beat them, I mean, that is very, very impressive. Obviously, Russell Wilson, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, still in that division. And then you look at the 49ers. I mean, with the situation with Jimmy Garoppolo out for probably a couple weeks, maybe. I'm not for sure how long he's going to be out. Trey Lance was phenomenal when he played against a good team in Seattle. Whichever, I mean, if the Cardinals or the Rams, whoever, any of those teams get 13, 14 wins in the NFC West, it really proves that they are serious Super Bowl contenders. Because if you win the NFC West, you're a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion. Because this is without a doubt the hardest division in the NFL. And I mean, the Cardinals, I'm just very, very impressed and surprised with them. Because I kind of had them in the 8 to 9 area because I feel like they are capable of having occasional upset over the Rams. But we've seen in years past, the past year or two, this Cardinals team can be inconsistent. And the fact that they are 4-0, just beat the best team in the league, best record in the NFL. I mean, you can make a case that, they're the best team in the NFL right now, but I don't think anybody expected them to be this good. It's going to be very interesting to see how they perform the rest of the season, but a very tough division in the NFC West. You mentioned Kyler Murray, hands down the MVP candidate right now, in my opinion. Very impressed with Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. Extremely interested to see if they can keep it up against these other tough teams in the division like San Francisco and Seattle.
Yeah, kudos to, like you said, the coaching staff. Just fantastic job. I really how they've built this roster and have kind of built it around Kyler Murray in the exact way I think he needed it to be. Kyler Murray entering the draft a couple of years ago was a guy that was, I think a lot of people thought that, hey, if he's able to roll out of the pocket and have good receivers that can get down the field and catch the ball like DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk and, even Rondale Moore now, I think everyone thought that, that would be how he succeeds. And I think that's exactly what the Cardinals did to a T. And it has worked beautifully. He's dangerous on his feet. So people, they have to respect the quarterback run possibly. That forces sometimes linebackers to play closer to the ball, maybe even safeties to play closer up. And that opens up the vertical down the field to DeAndre Hopkins, who's probably one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver right now in the NFL. So it is a perfectly built roster. And I credit everyone that was a part of that. They are doing really, really well. And of course, this team is not invincible, at all. It's one of the few times we have seen, I don't think there's a dominant force right now in the NFL at all. And I think it really opens it up for certain teams to maybe try to come in and win. But I think if we're talking about best team talent-wise, it's got to be the Cardinals.
And it's interesting because, J.J. Watt and Andrew Green are not what they used to be. I believe since 2016, Green has only 1 year where he has 1,000 yards. I believe also since 2016, Watt only has 1 year with 10 sacks. So these guys are kind of more, kind of towards the end of their career. But Green has been very impressive. Chandler Jones, I actually believe both of us had him as our defensive player of the year last year. Obviously, he got hurt at the beginning of the year. But, before that season, he had 48 sacks in the first 3 games. That's a sack a game. Like, there's times you can't even get that in a video game on Madden. I mean, they have the pieces there. I'm very excited to see them. I mean, if they end up winning the NFC West, if they have, 12 wins, they're definitely Super Bowl contenders. They're hands down the best team in the NFL right now after easily the best win right now in the NFL. It's a very good Rams team. Cannot wait for some of these matchups this week. I mean, there's so many interesting storylines in the NFL. I mean, this video we kind of talked about a lot of stuff. The Bengals improving to 3-1. Kind of the expectations for the Green Bay game. Urban Meyer saga in Jacksonville. The Cincinnati belong on the college football playoffs. Should AEW sign Braun Strowman? Brady's return to New England. And the Arizona Cardinals are the best team in the NFL right now and are legit Super Bowl contenders. So, Blake, can you kind of tell some of our listeners we can follow you on social media? I think you're on mute.
I always do that. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at StripeHypeCincy and on Twitter at BlakeJude714. Do a lot of Bengals stuff as well as NFL draft stuff down there. Also, go follow my website, BengalsInsiders.com. As well as my podcast now. I host the Stripe Hype All Day podcast with some friends. Feel free to go follow that and listen and keep up to date with all Bengals news and everything going on there. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely put the links in the description below so people can check out your content and your website and everything like that. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow me at Sports 2 Hines Show on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time on a Sports 2 Hines Show.